afternoon, boa tarde, buenas tardes, excelentísimo señor.
Your Excellency Laurentino Cortizo, President of the Republic of Panama, Mr. Hector Alexander, Chairperson of the Boards of Governors of the IDB and IDB Invest, and the Minister of Economy and Finance of Panama, outgoing Chairperson Nigel Clark, governors of the IDB and IDB Invest, heads of delegation, ambassadors, and members of the diplomatic corps, members of the Board of Executive Directors, senior management of the bank and IDB Invest, guests, special guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to be here today, here in Panama, for our annual meeting. This is my first as IDB president. We never forget the first time. Thank you, President Cortizo and Minister Alexander. I also thank all our Panamanian friends for their very warm welcome. I'd also like to thank the outgoing chairperson of our boards of governors, Minister Nigel Clark, for his outstanding work during this past year. And I would also like to welcome the incoming chairperson, my friend, Minister Hector Alexander. I look forward to working very closely with you. Since the last meeting of the IDB a year ago, that meeting was a virtual meeting, some countries of Latin America and the Caribbean have been able to see a recovery in jobs that have been lost during the pandemic. Last year, the countries of the region grew at the rate of 3.9%, and that exceeded expectations. But now, growth is slowing down, and we know that the outlook is impacted by what we have experienced, by the pandemic, by the Russian invasion of Ukraine, by record-level inflation around the world, by the food insecurity we're experiencing, and which has increased, and of course, the climate crisis. It is extremely important for us to consider these challenges today. They are not limited to individual countries, so we need to have a regional approach. And we also need to think globally, because some of these issues have a global scope. Allow me to first talk about Panama. Panama stands as an example of how it is possible to overcome difficult situations. This country's economic performance over time has been spectacular. We're speaking of an average growth of 6%. It's one of the highest in Latin America, if not the highest. Panama adopted a smart approach, a nonpartisan approach when it comes to the canal, how it's managed, how it was built and expanded, to be able to allow transit of larger ships. We're speaking of a dialogue, of a state project. And all of this should be a lesson for all of us of what happens when you apply public policies consistently over time, even when you have a change in administration and a change in party in power. I, from the very beginning, have stressed the importance of dialogue in a world that is increasingly polarized. Panama has achieved investments in infrastructure that have been able to speed up growth and expand services. Public services and infrastructure are the top priorities we are proposing. And Panama has also brought in the private sector with investments that have created jobs and economic opportunity. Partnerships with the private sector are instrumental if we are to have the desired development effectiveness. Latin America, not just Panama, must take innovative approaches. We need to look at those who can be creative, and we have the example of startups in Panama. We have not only innovators, we also have artists like Rubén Blades and other artists. And all of you are familiar, I'm sure, with the song Despacito. These are creative successes, and they should inspire all of us to dream of a region that is more prosperous in the future. Structurally, we face a triple challenge. And we must face this challenge, which is an age-old challenge, which has come to a head more recently. We need to do a better job of meeting the needs of our citizens. Because today, they demand better services, and rightly so. They want more education, they want more health, they want faster and safer transportation. They also want internet services, and why not? Climate. These demands, these claims are even harder to meet today because government resources are constrained. And Latin America has resource limitations because of fiscal pressures and because of high levels of indebtedness in some countries. So we could say, let's find the resources, but to do that, we need to grow. And that is where the region has faced difficulties, how to step up productivity. That is the triple challenge: greater social demands, more fiscal constraints with a higher debt, and slow growth. That is the challenge we need to take on. That is the challenge we need to face. I said to governors this morning, our governments must currently deal with a historic plague of poverty and inequality, stepping up productivity, accelerating growth, and at the same time, they must deal with more frequent climate events with more limited resources. But I also ended my speech this morning saying that none of this is going to be easy. But we do have a vision. We do have a vision for the region. How to better deal with these global challenges. And part of that vision means changing our mindset about the region and its challenges. It means looking at the region not as a victim of global problems, but as a region which can contribute to their solution. And that means that we must reposition the region on the global stage. And let me give you two examples of what this means. Climate change and food security are cases in point. Some of our countries stand as global leaders in their transition to net zero emissions. Just to mention one, Panama is just one of 3 countries which has a negative carbon position, and that is a fact. Let me mention a few more. About 30% of the region has renewable energy sources, and that sets us apart. In Central America, that number is 80%. In Latin America and the Caribbean, it's 60%. A number of countries are on their way to 100%. When our countries reduce emissions, this benefits the region, but it also benefits the rest of the world as countries strive to meet the Paris Agreement climate objectives. And then there's minerals. Latin America has 2/3 of the world's lithium supply. And lithium is part of the revolution when it comes to electric vehicles. They cannot run without the materials that are produced here.
Así la región
Therefore, the region
podría ser
could
una
be a
fuente de
source of
energía
clean
limpia para
energy
el mundo.
for the rest of the
el mundo.
world. We must
Debemos
make the
aprovechar
most
esta
of
ventaja
this competitive advantage
competitiva y de
and
manera
find ways
sostenible
to
utilizar
use these
estratégicamente
resources
nuestros recursos para
strategically
impulsionar
in order to
un
bolster
desarrollo
inclusive
pacífico.
development. If
Si
we
invertimos más
do
en la
more
agenda
with the
verde
green
y en la
agenda
mitigación
and
del
mitigate
cambio
climate change, we
climático,
will contribute not
contribuimos no
only
solamente al
to
bien
a
público,
local and
local,
regional public
regional, pero
good, but
global,
also a
que beneficia a
global
todos.
good that will benefit the
Si
rest of
lo
the world. And
hacemos,
if we do so, we
incentivamos
will
más
encourage other
compañías
companies in the
del sector
private
privado
sector
internacionales a
in
venir a
other
la
countries
región
to come
a
to the region
invertir
to invest
porque
because they
buscan
too
demostrar también
will want
su
to
credibilidad
show that they're
ambiental
environmentally responsible.
a
They
sus
will want to show
consumidores
this to
y a
their
sus
consumers and to their
accionistas.
shareholders.
Pues bien, también en
And then
seguridad
there's food
alimentar-
security.
alimentaria
This is
servimos
another
a
area
toda
in
la
which we
región.
hold part of the
Nuestra región
solution.
ya
Our
es
region
la
is the
principal
leading exporter
exportadora
of
de
foods.
alimentos. Aún
And
así,
even so, 60 million
60
people in
millones
Latin
de
America
personas
and
en
the
América Latina y
Caribbean
Caribe
go
pasan
hungry.
hambre.
This is
Esto
totally
es
unacceptable.
totalmente inaceptable.
We can and
Podemos y
must
debemos
help
ayudar a
solve this
resolver este
problem
problema
here
aquí,
in
en
this
nuestra
region
región, pensando y
by
actuando local y
finding local
regionalmente.
solutions
Pero
that can
también
also be
globalmente.
applied elsewhere.
Si hacemos
If
las
we
reformas
undertake
y nuestra
reforms,
región podría
if our
producir
region can
8
increase its
veces más
production
alimentos,
eightfold,
suficientes
it
para
would be enough,
alimentar,
as
le
I was
estaba
saying
diciendo
this
hoy a la
morning, to
mañana,
feed
a
10
10 mil
billion
millones de
people.
personas.
In other
En
words,
otras palabras, abordar las
we could address
preocupaciones
our
nuestras de
own
América
needs
Latina
and at the same
podría
time
también
help
ayudar a
meet
abordar la
the
demanda
global
mundial de
food
alimentos.
demands.
Nuevamente,
Again,
la
the
región puede ser
region
una
could be
parte
an important
importante de esta
part of the
solución
global
global.
solution.
Tenemos que
So we need to
cambiar
start
y
thinking
pensar cómo
differently
nosotros
and
podemos
see
ser
ourselves
parte
as part
de
of
la
the
solución.
solution.
Y el
And
bien
then there's the IDB. The
tiene que
IDB
aprovechar
has
estas
to seize
y
this
otras
opportunity
oportunidades.
and others. I was saying
Estaba
this
diciendo a la
morning, we
mañana
need
que
a more
necesitamos un BID
effective
más efectivo,
IDB, a
un BID que
bank
se
which
enfoque en los
focuses on
resultados
results.
de forma
It
medible,
must
que mejoren las vidas.
have better metrics. It must
Pero también
improve lives.
necesitamos
But to
para
do
eso
that,
priorizar.
we need to set
Estaba
priorities.
hablando
As
con
I
el
was speaking
presidente,
with
le
the
decía
president, I was telling him
que
that
si
if
no
we have no
priorizas
priorities or
las
if we have too
prioridades,
many
hay muchas prioridades,
priorities,
no hay ninguna, pues
it's
bien,
the same as having no
estoy definiendo las
priorities.
prioridades,
So
vamos
that's
a
what we are working
conjuntamente con los
with the
gobernadores
IDB governors to set priorities
primero los temas
jointly. First,
sociales,
there's
la pobreza,
poverty
la
and
desigualdad
inequality
en
at
todas las
all
dimensiones,
levels,
la
food
inseguridad
insecurity,
alimentaria, las
health and
cuestiones de salud, de
education.
educación,
All of
son
these
todas
are
interconectadas.
interconnected if you think about it. And then there's
Segundo, el
climate.
clima. Pues
Climate
el
change
cambio
is
climático
here.
ya llegó a nuestra región.
We see it in the
Piénsalo acá en
region.
Panamá.
Panama,
Vemos
for
los
example,
huracanes,
knows
los
hurricanes
los
and other
eventos
extreme
climáticos
climate events
extremos. El BID
firsthand. The
tiene que
IDB
trabajar
must work
más
more
estrechamente
closely
con
with
los
the
gobiernos,
governments and
con
with
el
the
sector
private
privado,
sector, as
con
well as other
otros socios
partners, to
para
become
ser más
more
ágil,
nimble and more
innovador,
innovative
para
in
enfrentar
tackling
los desastres
natural
naturales
disasters
y
and
trabajar
finding ways
la
to promote
adaptación al
climate
cambio
change
climático. Y aquí
adaptation.
no estamos hablando
And we're not just speaking of
global,
Central
también
America or the
central o del
Caribbean.
Caribe,
Maybe
pero varios países de la región tienen
they may be at the
eventos y
forefront,
desastres
but there are other
naturales.
countries in the region that
Tenemos
also
que
face
pensar
natural
también facilitar lo que
disasters.
llamamos de la
We
mitigación
also need to look
del
at climate
impacto del
change
cambio climático
mitigation,
y también
and
trabajar
we
por la
must work to
preservación de
preserve
la
our
biodiversidad.
biodiversity.
Y aquí yo
I'm
vengo
from
de Brasil, yo
Brazil,
pienso
so
en
I
la
think of the
Amazonia, pero la
Amazon,
Amazonia
but
no es
that's not
solamente Brasil. La Amazonia
just
son
Brazil. The
varios
Amazon
países,
region
son
involves many
muchos
countries,
pueblos,
many
muchos
peoples, many
negocios
businesses, and we
y
all
tenemos
must
que
work
trabajar
together
juntos
with a regional
regionalmente.
approach.
Tercera
It
prioridad,
has to be a priority to
invertir más en
invest
la
more
infraestructura
in
física y
physical,
digital estratégica,
sustainable
priorizando la
infrastructure,
integración
promoting regional
regional y
integration, and
movilizando el
mobilizing
capital
private
privado.
capital.
Cuando construyes una
When you build
infraestructura física y
physical and
digital,
digital infrastructure, you
reduces los
bring
costos
down the cost of
comerciales
doing
y
business,
puedes agregar
and you can add
miles de millones
billions
de
of
dólares
dollars
a
to our
nuestro PIB,
country's GDP.
cada año teniendo
This would
impacto
have a
directo
direct
en
impact
las
on
personas. A más
people.
PIB, más
More
recursos,
GDP
más
means
bienes.
more goods,
Y la infraestructura digital hoy
and
es una puerta de acceso
digitalization
a
brings
innumerables oportunidades
access to many
económicas y educativas. Se
opportunities,
educa con el
which would
digital,
benefit
la salud
education as
también
well
con
as
digital.
health.
Y
and would have a positive impact on millions of people who may be excluded from the system today. And that includes many indigenous communities and Afro-descendants. So we need to do more for regional integration. I've said that it is part of the IDB's mandate. Its mandate gives it a unique opportunity to solve regional challenges. The vision for the IDB requires that it become the most important institution in Latin America. This means that it should be the institution that has a leadership role in the region. It has to be the preferred partner of countries in the long term, not just in the short term. It should also be the pride of its employees, and it should also be the knowledge bank for the region. If these are the right priorities and if they're part of our vision, we will be able to do much more. We need to focus not just on the dollars or the resources we provide and approve. What really matters is what we were saying before. It's the purpose. It's the results, the concrete results that we're able to deliver to our citizens. That is an essential part of our vision for the IDB. And the more we focus on results, the more we will be able to do when it comes to gender and diversity. We'll be more inclusive in the work we do at the bank. I've already spoken too long, President, but I just wanted to let you know that the challenges we face did not come up overnight, so we cannot solve them overnight or in just one day. But we will solve them if we follow Panama's example. If we are patient and persistent, that is what will enable us to achieve significant progress. Thank you very much, President Cortizo, for welcoming us so warmly. We hope to continue this conversation and to leave this annual meeting with concrete steps with a view to building a better IDB, which will better serve Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you.